Hallo, ich habe euch etwas mitgebracht, ein neues Video. I have an interesting video idea for today. Now we have all seen adaptations of our favorite books. Most of them were great, and some were not. In this video I want to talk about books that were much better than the film adaptations. At best, the adaptation was mediocre, but at worst it was infuriating because of how awful it was. So without further ado, let's get started. For this video I counted 10 books that have from mediocre to awful film adaptations. I'd like to start with Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, the first book of Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. I don't know how to pronounce it. I haven't read the rest of the series, only the first one, and it's a fun book. But the film butchered this book because there were lots of changes that didn't make sense, and it was way too Hollywood-like for my taste, to the point that there were a lot of pop songs there, songs that were popular at the moment, back in 2010. The characters are older and don't resemble their book counterparts, and basically this is your average Hollywood coming-of-age story that doesn't reflect what's written in the book. But at least into film's defense, I can say that the special effects were decent. And to some extent, this is sort of a guilty pleasure film to me. There's something about Percy Jackson film, the first one, that I like. There's something, I don't know what. Oh, I also have the film poster cover of the book. It's kind of hard to believe that the film was directed by Chris Columbus, the director of the first two Harry Potter films and the first two Home Alone films. Next book is one of my absolute favorite books. I like to open it at any moment. And the film adaptation, well, I can't say that it sucks, I won't say that, but it definitely did not live up to the quality of the book, and that's The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And so the film adaptation has some good actors and some really nice scenes, but in overall it's a very mediocre adaptation of The Book Thief. The book is so deep and rich, characters are written so well, and the film kinda butchered that. The film lacks the depth from the book, and some storylines are shortened. Like I said, that I don't mind the changes as long as they make sense. Number 8 has to be His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. So this book has 2 adaptations. The first one came in 2007. They planned to make films of all 3 books, but the first one failed at the box office, so they decided to scrap the adaptations of the rest of the books until 2019, when the HBO show came out. So the film adaptation of the first book is called The Golden Compass. For some reason that's the name of the first book in the US, and there were lots of changes that did not make sense, and the Lyra is very unlikable. I don't know, maybe that I'm saying this because I watched The Golden Compass only a few years ago, and maybe if I watched it from start to finish back then when it came out, I would have thought differently. But Lyra is kinda unlikable. She's kinda frowny and a little bit mean, in my opinion. The first book is very good, and I like that the HBO show adapted it quite well. At least it's loyal to the book, and it's easy to understand what's going on if you haven't read the books. But the first adaptation fails. It cuts a lot from the books, and it changed a few scenes to the point that they don't make sense at all. There were some changes that, if I tell you, it's a spoiler, but there's a change that did not make sense to me. Now, there is no discussion of failed book adaptations without discussing Stephen King. Needful Things, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, where do I start? Okay, so I understand that the book is very huge. It's around 800 pages long. They shortened it. You know, now when I think about it, they should have treated this book like they treated it. Because it is such a huge book, they made a 2-film series starring Tim Curry. Probably they should have done the same for Needful Things. Okay, a few moments from the film are fun, but a lot has been cut from the book when it made it to the film. And the worst part for me is the ending. The ending sucked a lot. The ending is so rich in the book, and in the end, in the film, it's like, okay, never mind. That's basically all. Okay, this isn't the worst case. In this video there are worse cases ahead, but I'm definitely disappointed, especially by the ending. Now, when I think about it, I wouldn't be talking about Needful Things in the video if it had a decent ending. So the book number 5 is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, or to be particular, part 3. The Hobbit actually has a few adaptations. The first one is the 1977 animated film from Warner Brothers. I think I think these were the distributors. Anyway, it's a decent animated film. I like the drawing style. Another adaptation is the 1985 Russian adaptation. It's a sort of theatrical adaptation. The most famous adaptation is the Percy Jackson adaptation. So this very small book, it's around 300 pages something long. It was made into 3 epic live-action films. They wanted to recreate the Lord of the Rings magic, and I think that it would have captured at least some of it if it wasn't for the 3rd film. A lot of people don't like The Hobbit, but I love the first 2 films. Yes, there were a lot of extra changes that were added that weren't really necessary and didn't make sense, but the first 2 films are still fun. They're still very interesting and nice to watch, but the 3rd one is a disappointment because it's basically one huge battle. It's full of CGI. The 3rd film is a very disappointing one. The deal is that even before I went to the cinema to watch the film, I sensed that it's not going to be a great one, but I went anyway and took a large company with me because it was still the last film. And I love the first 2. Battle of the 5 Armies, that's the name of the 3rd film, does have a few nice moments to it. Number 6 on this list has to be The Scorch Trials. This is the 2nd book in the Maze Runner series by James Dashner. I like the adaptation of the first book. I watched it a few times. There is something very nice about the first Maze Runner film. Sure, it does have moments that are like, we won't explain to you, go read the book. But it's still a nice adaptation, nice to watch. But The Scorch Trials, it was a very disloyal adaptation and it failed a lot. It's a very mediocre adaptation. It's lower than mediocre in my opinion. Okay, I won't talk about it anymore because the adaptation is not that great and I did not continue the series. In a film way, I mean I did not watch the 3rd one. The book was quite good and the film was not. So we're coming to Stephen King again. Okay, I understand that this film is considered a cult classic. I hate this film. I hated it before I read the book, and after I read the book I hate it even more. The Shining. I know that there is a much more loyal adaptation of this book, but not many people have heard about it. It's a 3-series film, maybe I should watch it. Of course, I'm talking about the Stanley Kubrick adaptation. It was awful. I hated it so much. It has a few nice scenes, like the scenes in the labyrinth and the infamous egg scene and a few others, but as a book adaptation, this film fails a lot. The deal is that the book is so rich, it's very detailed, it's very interesting. Okay, I don't want to talk about that film anymore. I hate it so much. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Yeah, unpopular opinion, I guess. Change my mind. But I don't think it will change. Now we have come to a few books that have adaptations that make me angry a lot, because next ones they do really suck. So book number 8 is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I really can't believe that this film was directed by Tim Burton. Tim Burton, who made such an amazing films like Beetlejuice, Edward Scissorhands, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Corpse Bride, and Sweeney Todd. You got it. I really dislike the fact that they turned this amazing book that had its dark, mysterious and kinda scary moments, and also at the same time it was very thrilling and exciting. They turned it into teen soap opera. So the characters are butchered, they switched the powers of some kids. The Miss Peregrine is a very cold and unlikable character, and that's not the actress's fault. The main character itself is so dumb, and the third act is really stupid. And the worst of all is the ending. Maybe it's going to be a little bit spoiling, but I'm gonna say it. The books, the first 3 books, I haven't read the rest, they have enough material for a good TV show, or a mini show consisting of a few seasons with limited amount of series. The ending made it clear that the film is closed, so there's not going to be any continuations. No sequels in the future. I hated how they handled this book. They're dark, mysterious in a good way. It's scary, it's exciting, it's thrilling, there are lots of emotions, and the film is very sugary, Hollywood-like. Number 9 has to be The Dark Tower. I don't have the copies of the series anymore. Oh, where should I start? Imagine if they tried to make Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or Game of Thrones 90 minutes film. Imagine that they shortened and butchered everything, and they mixed everything and put it into a very short film and called it an adaptation. Of course, such book adaptations would fail, and this is what happened to The Dark Tower. I have already mentioned in my videos that I am not a huge fan of The Dark Tower. I think it's a kinda overrated series. Someone who read the books, particularly the first 5, I recognized that they handled the adaptation really poorly. They changed the plot completely. They made Jake the main character, basically, and I would have tolerated that if it didn't butcher the series all the same. But you know the worst part? Even if you forget about the books and think of The Dark Tower as a separate film, as something really new, it still fails. It doesn't explain anything. It has a very mediocre plot. It sucks. Simply, it sucks. It's awful. And now we have come to the book that has an adaptation that infuriated me most of all. I hate this film so much. Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This book has 2 adaptations, and I'm talking about the HBO adaptation that came out in 2018. It's so bad, it still makes me angry when I think about it. Well, they butchered the whole point of the book, and they made it about everything Ray Bradbury actually stood against. The plot literally made no sense, and they stepped away from the book as much as possible to the point that it lost its original meaning. Okay, I will put the book down. I hate Fahrenheit 451 from HBO so much. And that's all. These are all the 10 books with awful or mediocre adaptations. And before I finish, 1 honorable mentions. Okay, this series I love very much, and all the films, although this one is the weakest. Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. And this makes me really sad because the book is stellar. They cut out all the important events from the book, replaced it with some teen drama and cringy moments. The worst part is that the film has a disgusting, unwatchable color spectrum. I hated the colors of the film. But I still added this book into honorable mention because after all it's still a Harry Potter film and it's still good, just not as good as the other films. And now, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. What are the worst film adaptations in your opinion? Let me know down in the comments. See you next time. Goodbye.